So I think, yeah, I can slowly just start, of course, just introducing, our project and our session a little bit. So we are Youth for the Rhine. We are a new project. So I'll just, oh, okay, maybe.
I will help you,
Yes.
people, okay?
If you don't mind helping me.
Yeah.
I think people are like really coming in. So Viviana, you'll take care of that. Oh,
Yep.
okay. So yeah, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining our session. My name is Emily, and I'm the project manager of Youth for the Rhine. And I work at IHE Delft. That's the Institute for Water Education of UNESCO, affiliated to UNESCO in the Netherlands. And we are a new project, Youth for the Rhine. We exist since December of last year. So this is one of our first public appearances, and we're very excited to be here and co-create with you guys. As I mentioned to the people who were here before, please feel free to turn on your camera, because this is going to be, I think, a nice interactive session. We want to have your input. It's for us very valuable to hear your perspectives as young professionals. So please feel free at some point to do that. I will go through the agenda of the webinar a little bit later, but I wanted to first introduce the team here with me today. So we have, Alyssa. Maybe you can wave, Alyssa. Alyssa is the focal point of our pilot project committee. And the pilot project, as you will hear, works on water quality issues in the Rhine Basin. So really understanding the perspectives of young people. We have Maitri, if you can also wave, Maitri. Maitri is the focal point of our communications and outreach committee. They're one of the most critical committees in our project, because they really convey our messages externally to you. We have also Amrita from the Online Youth Consultation Committee. Amrita is a focal point, and what she does is really try to consult youth on their perspectives of climate adaptation, which is what we're doing today. So this is actually a great opportunity to already start consulting you guys. And then we have Viviana. Viviana is also a focal point for our partnerships and fundraising committee. So we're really new project. What we try to do is activate young end users in the Rhine Basin, but also beyond. So our members come from all over the world, really. We have people from, very different perspectives joining our project. And what we do is, through the model of co-creation, the ABCD model that you will learn today, we start with the end user and ask end users, in our case, young people, what are their perspectives? What are the problems we face in the Rhine Basin, and how should we solve them? It's really, instead of starting at the higher decision-making levels, we start really at the bottom-up approach with end users living directly across the Rhine Basin. So it's a unique model we're trying for the first time, and we're very excited to have you here. And we hope that this session will be fun, useful, and stimulating for all of you guys. Without further ado, I will present Amrita, who will give a little presentation, a quick presentation on the Rhine and the transboundary basin. Thank you. Go ahead, Amrita.
Thank you so much, Emily, for the nice introduction and overall objective of today's workshop. So just starting with the idea, for the ones who do not know where Rhine River Basin is, or like even for the ones who know it already, just to give a recap, to have a recap for all of us. We all know, or like most of us here, we might know, the Rhine connects millions of people from the Alps to the North Sea with a length of 1,233 kilometers. Its catchment includes 9 states. That's why it's a transboundary in nature, an area of about 200,000 kilometers square. 60 million inhabitants, as well as important cities and fascinating landscapes, as shown in figure here. You can see here in the figure directly. And to talk about ICPR, it's International Commission for the Protection of Rhine, the states and regions in Rhine Basin, Switzerland, France, Germany, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, Austria, Liechtenstein, Wallonia, Italy, as well as the European Union, all joined forces in the International Commission for the Protection of the Rhine, ICPR, founded in 1950 to improve the sustainable growth of the river and its catchment. Here you can also see in the figure, the first historical common goal of ICPR was to reduce water pollution. The whole process got a new force with the chemical catastrophe at the Sandoz plant near Basel in 1986, which saw aquatic ecosystems being seriously damaged. This disaster led to a better integration of the issues of ecology into the task of the ICPR. Depollution and rehabilitation programs with actions and measures were established from that time. In the 1990s, severe flood events forced the ICPR to add flood protection and its sustainability goals to enable a better protection of the citizens. So it's about more or less some ideas about ICPR, what it is doing and what's its vision. And to talk about why it is important to have youth-led initiatives for the water and climate action, why it is important, what are the objectives, and how we can cooperate and how we can move forward for the climate adaptation so that we can actually preserve our natural resources, not for just this time, for the long term, for the new generation and for upcoming protection of the system. So that's why when we talk about the initiative, the requirement of initiatives, the main points can be just summarized at like it's really important to understand these offerings and solutions. It is very vital to involve youth voices from the ideation to implementation, just not in one phase, but from an overall package of the work, providing healthy environment and interactive space for innovation, thus valuing water initiative and the role of youth inclusion, preserving natural resources for now and for generations ahead to ensure sustainable growth and development. Thank you so much. And I again give this platform to my colleague, Alisa.
Thanks, Amrita. So as Emily mentioned, we want today to be a really collaborative atmosphere, and we certainly want to get to know you and your ideas. So for those of you who are just joining, we encourage you to feel free to turn on your screen if you have the bandwidth so we can see your videos and see your faces as we have this discussion. But we also wanted to start things off by getting to know you guys a little bit better. So we have just a really short Mentimeter to start hearing from you all. Let me just go ahead and share my screen as soon as, there we go. So for those of you who haven't seen Mentimeter before, we have an online quiz. You guys can go ahead and go to www.menti.com and enter this code, and it'll enable you in real time to be answering the questions. So the first thing we want to know is just to get an idea of where are you from. So you can go ahead and just put a point on the map. It looks like we're already getting some responses. Have quite a few people from Europe. Give a couple minutes more. We'll give you 30 more seconds to respond. And if anyone's having any trouble getting into the Mentimeter, definitely send us a message and let us know.
I think someone wrote in the chat they're not able to place the pin.
Okay, well, you can always send it in the chat to us if you want to let us know where you're from and we can place it for you. But yeah, it looks like we've got a great range of people here today. Quite a few people from Europe, several from North America, several from South America, and as well from India. And if you guys look at the map and you see these blue outlines here, you'll notice that these aren't country borders. And so these outlines here represent transboundary river basins. So as Amrita mentioned, river basins that are shared by one or more countries. And so what we can see today is that although not all of us are necessarily from the Rhine River Basin, quite a few of us are from transboundary basins throughout the world. And so as we're thinking about issues that are faced in the Rhine, we can also think of what's faced in our own contexts. So going into that, we have another question. So since we're all from different places, one thing we share is that we all have surface water bodies near our homes. So if you guys can take a minute and think of the nearest river to where you live, and if you could use one word to describe that river, the first thing that comes to your head, what would that be? And you can go ahead and enter it into the Menti again. So we'll give you guys 30 seconds.
For the ones that are joining, just a quick reminder that you can go to www.menti.com and insert this code to participate in this question.
Thanks, Viviana. And let's give it 20 more seconds. So I think we're seeing quite a few interesting responses, a lot of discussion about polluted waterways, neglected waterways, disgusting at times. We also see items related to flooding, so extra precipitation leading to floods, and navigation. And so we can see there's a lot of different uses for waterways, but also a lot of different perceptions we have of the water that's nearby us. And we've got one more question just to get to know how everyone's thinking and get us to start thinking about climate change. And this is an open answer question. You guys can type the response in, but we want to know, how has climate change affected where you live? So there's probably a lot of answers. You can give a really long response, or if you want to name just one or two ideas that come to mind, feel free to enter those into Mentimeter now.
Alyssa, I'm not able to do it. It says the quiz is not open. Maybe it says please wait for the presenter to activate it.
Okay, this one I'm getting as something went wrong on the form. So let me see if I can just restart it. Is it working now?
Unfortunately not for me.
Okay.
No, it's not working.
Well, why don't we all take a minute to think for ourselves what our response would be. And then this is a great thing that we can share later when we get into a panel discussion. So everyone take 15 seconds, kind of think in your mind, how does climate change affected you in your region? What's one issue you might want to address? And it's something that can come up later in the discussion.
We have some responses in the chat.
Oh, also you can send a message in the chat. So thank you everyone for participating in that. And thank you as well for your responses in our Mentimeter. It's very nice to get to start hearing from you all, and I look forward to hearing from you through the rest of this program. But I'm gonna turn it over to Emily now to discuss what we're gonna be doing today.
Yeah, so thank you, Alyssa. I will share my screen again. So today, and Viviana, if you don't mind admitting people as they come into the lobby.
Yeah.
So today, basically today we want to hear from you as end users. As I explained in the beginning, in Youth for the Rhine, we really emphasize the importance of starting with a perspective of young end users. So we want to hear from you. What are some issues you come across in your river basin? So we have people from all over the world. What are some climate adaptation issues you have faced? Is it pollution? Is it flooding? Is it whatever it might be? We want to hear from you. And following that, we will go into breakout rooms to come up with solutions to these problems using the ABCD model of co-creation. This is a model that we work with in our project. So I hope we hope we can introduce this to you, that you can also use it for yourselves back home as a way to create sustainable innovations to climate challenges. So today we will, again, start with a roundtable discussion facilitated by Maitri. Then we will have a presentation by Viviana on what is this ABCD model. And then we will go into breakout rooms, where we will, in smaller teams, discuss how we can solve these issues together using this new model we have presented to you. Finally, we'll come back together and present the different solutions that were discussed. And we will conclude with a reflection of what we did today, how we co-created together as young end users, and how, Youth for the Rhine, you can join if you're interested in joining us, but also how we will use the input we get today to channel to our future project work. So that's a little bit of an explanation of the rundown for the workshop today. And without further ado, I will pass it to Alyssa, who will explain or kick off the session on identifying climate adaptation challenges, the perspectives of end users, in our case, young people. So Alyssa, it's your turn.
Well, hi again, everyone. So as Emily mentioned, we want to give you just an idea of some of the ways that we focus on end users in the work we do. And so although we're going to talk about other basins as well today, just want to touch one more time again on the Rhine River Basin. And as you guys can imagine, there's quite a few climate challenges in the basin as well as in others. And these can be related to physical changes, so our hydrologic and temperature changes that affect the water cycle, but as well changes that are related to how humans are adapting to climate change and how they're changing their land and water use. And what results of this is we see a major change in our rivers in regards to water quantity, so in relation to droughts and flooding, which I believe I saw some of you guys talking about in the chat, as well as ecosystem change. For instance, having a change in our fish biodiversity because some don't necessarily have the same temperature tolerance, and as well how all of those combine and relate to water quality in the river basins. And so, Emily, you can go ahead and click. And so that's what we chose to focus on in our pilot project of the Youth for the Rhine. And we picked water quality because it's a topic that we're all personally interested in, but also because we are seeing global water quality degradation in all continents. And it's also an issue that we see some of the lowest public awareness related to. And so we really wanted to get into water quality a bit more and get into how it affects our end users or our youth. And so you can click the next slide. We established the water quality pilot project. And so within the Youth for the Rhine, over the course of this year, we're working to really find information on the ground and to work and engage with how water quality impacts youth within the Rhine River Basin. And Emily has mentioned the word end users a lot. What that means is we're prioritizing youth in this. We're seeing youth are the people that are interacting with the river, that are using water from the river, that live along the river. And so we want to understand their experiences and what we could do to address water quality concerns that they have. And this results in, you can click the next slide. We have a 4-part approach. So our first part is to conduct a water quality survey. And so what we're doing is we are putting out a survey online to all the youth within the Rhine River Basin. And this is looking at how does water quality impact you, but then also importantly, how do you perceive water quality impacts? Because as we mentioned, public awareness is pretty low for water quality issues in general across the globe. And so by understanding how they're perceived, we understand if, do you think water quality is a risk? Do they think this is an issue we need to pursue? Or maybe are there gaps in understanding that we can help to fill through our work? And so this is really our opportunity to listen to the voices in the basin. Our next step is to then conduct supplementary data collection. So using citizen science to do water quality monitoring along the basin, which will both give opportunities to youth to get involved in collecting the data themselves, as well as capacity development in order to help us teach everyone how to be able to collect that data and be aware of that data. And then also an educational outreach campaign where we're pair with visitor centers along the Rhine River Basin to give some information about water quality and what does this mean and how does this affect people. So in this sense, we took what we heard from youth, and then we're working to build understanding through our data collection and outreach so that we're really having information sharing and knowledge sharing together, and that it's really a collaborative process. And then our final step is to amplify the voices of everything we found. So amplify our results of the water quality survey, the feedback we got in our data collection, educational outreach, to give it to decision makers in the basin so that they can really see the youth perspective, and this brings the youth voice even more firmly to the table so it can be part of co-creation of solutions. And so where we are right now, go ahead and click, Emily, is that we are launching our water quality survey next week. So I know that it looked like quite a few of you lived in the Rhine Basin. If you're interested, and sorry, Emily, you can click again. We'll be launching our water quality survey on our website, www.youthfortherhine.org. So please feel free to stop by and fill it out and make your voice heard, because we certainly want to hear from you. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Maitri, who's going to talk a bit more about what it means for end users and have a conversation with everyone.
Thanks so much, Elisa. It's really nice to be here. I think carrying a little bit of what Elisa said about the different kind of changes that we see, not just within the Rhine, but also in different rivers. Maybe today we'd like to invite all of you to really think about 3 key questions that we'll be going through in the next 15 minutes, and to really think about how we as end users are actually engaging with these challenges. So maybe if we can all turn your mics on, and if I can request Viviana to really have some notes. Can you go to the next slide, Emily? I think the first thing that we'd all like to understand from your end is what do you think are some challenges that we face in transboundary rivers? Also understanding from where you're coming and where you live, what do you really think are some challenges that you really see in an everyday life, or you read about them, or something that you experienced yourself firsthand? Maybe you can turn your mics on.
So you can go ahead and unmute yourself just by clicking the button on the bottom left, and feel free to share. It looks like we have a very active chat, so we'd like to hear it as well. And Maitri, there's a hand raised.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Rom, if I've got that right.
Yeah, that's right. Hi, everybody. I would just like to point out that a challenge that we face in the Rhine River, and I think in some other basin as well, is there's a challenge of stakeholder participation. That's, in my view, is a big challenge.
And maybe can you tell us what exactly about stakeholder participation? Where do you feel there's a problem?
Well, sorry. There are different levels of water management, and basically the international level is we have a couple of institutions existing in the Rhine River Basin, as well as other river basins, and basically the local level is not really represented. So we have let's say a functional institution, international ones, and we have interstate meetings, but the local voices are not heard. That's why your project is very timely.
Certainly, I think that's a challenge we face across a lot of transboundary basins, because a lot of the things don't even trickle down to the local level, and the local voices are in turn not really heard at that institutions, you know? That's a really big challenge. Anything else? Can someone think of? Feel free. There's nothing as right or wrong. We all face challenges and we're all there.
Hello. Oh, sorry.
Yes. Go ahead.
Someone was talking, so I don't know if I can go.
Go ahead. I'll go after.
Okay, thank you. I would say as well on the local aspect too, that sharing information could be a very important point, because sometimes what it's decided on a top level, it's not really coming through, or with a lot of delay. So then it's difficult for people on the local, on the local level to then do the good practice, you know, and do the good things. Like, for example, I'm thinking about a river next to my dad. He has a vineyard, and all the owner vineyards then has to talk within each other. It's not all the time one is aware of something when there's a drought, for example, in summertime, and they ask to stop using the water, then you just, no one gets all of a sudden the information, you know, from out of the blue. So I think it's actually really important to have good communication, and it's a first step.
Right, that's indeed very true, because a lot of us are not really aware of the rules and regulations. And also sometimes when different kind of amendments are made, I think we are a little lost there. It's very rightly said. We had another hand up. If you can go ahead now. I'm sorry, I can't see.
Yeah, no worries. Hi, thank you. My name's Harmony. I'm from Ottawa, or what is now called Ottawa, but I live near the Kitchissippi River on Algonquin territory. It actually serves as a natural border between Ontario and Quebec, right? But as an Indigenous person, all I see is like unceded and unsurrendered Algonquin territory. So I don't really see like the provincial borders that most people would see in Canada. It's just like territories. So I think some of the challenges is just trying to uplift more Indigenous voices. Thank you.
Right. Thank you so much for that. Very true. A lot of times Indigenous voices get lost with the notion that they're not scientific and technical enough. That's quite a very big challenge for us. Maybe we can take one more and we move on to the next question, perhaps. Maybe some challenges that you can think of. Perhaps about the...
Well, I think...
Go ahead, yes.
Yeah, thanks. I think that one challenge would be to develop some sustainable ways to use water for different needs, like agriculture, for example. I mean, when you have a river that flows through different countries, they all need the water to water their crops. And sometimes like the countries that are above, like further above the river, they will use like a lot of water because there is a lot of them of it available. And then the countries that are more near the ocean will have less and less water for the crops. So it would be a challenge to be able to use more sustainably the water for countries above. So all different countries can have the water for the crops.
Right. I think that's very rightly put. You know, we call this the upstream downstream distribution. It's such a big problem, how much the upstream uses and what's the quality of water that flows downstream. And, you know, what's the compromise that's made by the downstream countries. And it's really a big challenge. Well, we move on to the next question. I think we will reflect this again within our discussion a bit later. Maybe the next question is a bit reflecting on these challenges. I mean, we know that we're facing issues of information wherein stakeholder voices are not really considered, and we have distributional issues. Now, the next question that we want to ask you is, how can you make a change as a young leader in your own capacity? Right? A little bit to think about is, do you really feel connected with these decision makers, sort of implement different kind of solutions to manage the river and to really look at the best optimal use of the river? So maybe how would you as a young leader make a change? What is it that you would do in the first hand? If we can have some more voices. Hasiba, go ahead.
Yes, hello everyone. I'm Hasiba and I'm from Algeria. Regarding this question, I would say like perhaps why not in the first step going, for example, to schools and to kids mainly in order to inform them and to raise awareness regarding this problem, or perhaps we would go, for example, to ministries, environmental ministries, and perhaps make change. This is what I would suggest. Thank you.
That's very lovely. I think that's one of the objectives of what we also run within Youth for the Rhine, is really get to that young generation to really make them understand what the river is all about and really inform them about these changes that happen. You know, it's lovely. I think that's really important for all of us to do. Some more ideas? How would you make a difference? I mean, the fact that we're all here. Naomi, did I get that right?
Yeah, it's okay. In English, it's Naomi, but you can say Noemi in French. It's fine. Don't worry. I think I would say that we should advocate to have more representation in water committee. For example, in France, we have 6 regional water agency, and just one is having 1 seat for youth in a committee, one of them. So, for example, at my scale now, I'm trying to reach the one of my region, one of the 6, and tell them, look, this other agency has done this. We have a seat for youth. Maybe could have joined your seat and take this seat. Yeah, so I would recommend as well to like be implicated directly where the decisions are taken. It's a good point.
That's great. In fact, I think the problem of representation is really important also, because the more the numbers we have, the more the leverage we have on the whole decision-making process. Lorraine, did I get that right?
Yeah, it's okay. I'm French and I live in the Netherlands, and I know in the Netherlands, it kind of goes back with what Noemi just said. Like, I feel the water, like how they manage to get participation regarding water is different. Like actually, Dutch residents can vote and get a say into like who they want to, which party should lead the board of water. It's not probably the right word, but I feel in France we don't have such I mean, I barely know what's happening regarding water, and I feel maybe if we could get more like awareness about what our country does regarding water, maybe it will like I mean, change something. People would become a bit more aware.
That's very true. The Dutch Water Authority is actually an independent body, and there's a different election for that as well, which is why it's a separate body of functioning in itself. I think that's very useful to say, because in a lot of countries, water is a matter of the state, and it's a little more problematic when you want to distribute it, especially in large countries. We had another hand. I missed that. I'm sorry. Anybody else would want to say something? Lucas.
Yeah, we have one hand.
Hi.
Yeah, I think that one thing we can do is to actually not wait for decision makers to make decision. As we saw in the past few years, the youth movement for climate change, for example, took decision without waiting for decision makers. We saw that in France, for example, in Belgium too. Like youth went to talk to the decision makers by themselves and took actions and decisions by themselves. So what we could do is create organizations, or actually help different actors that work for, let's say, for the Rhine, and bring them together. So we could come with ideas together and then take actions without waiting for the decision makers. Because I could only guess and only imagine that already today there are so many actors working for the Rhine in France, Netherlands, Australia, etc. So we could just like bring them all together, and so like all the energy would be in the same place, and we could come up with ideas rather than waiting for decision makers.
Very nicely put. In fact, I think that's the need of the hour. because the more we try and influence the civil society, like exactly Elisa just said, it's very important that we bring those localized changes. That's essentially how we bring that systemic change. Lovely. We have another last comment, and then we move on to the last question of this discussion. Anything that anyone wants to reflect on based on what we've really identified till now? Or we can move to the last question. Okay, I take the call. We go to the last question then. A little bit of, it's a continuation of the second question, is where do you think youth are the most effective in all these processes? I mean, we've spoken about going to schools and making that change, talking to ministries, and also, making more representation within different organizations and agencies. So where do you think that youth will be more effective? What's the agency there? How do we have that kind of an agency? In your opinion? Any thoughts? You can always contest the question if you don't agree with it. Rom, go ahead.
Yeah, I think the added value of youth is really to be creative and to be not limited, in the way we can reinvent the future and be agile when we face adversity. And I would say everybody can be young, even an older person, but generally managers, or let's say water managers beyond a certain age, they tend to just repeat and repeat again the same processes and the same vision they have learned from different institutions. So I think the youth can bring this kind of power for change.
Wow. That's very true. I think one thing that you said is everyone can be young. I think that's a really good way for us. That's very true. I think the amount of potential we have to experiment. I mean, even we don't know if certain solutions are going to work, or even if our agency or voice is going to be heard. But the risk taking that we have, and with the faith that we go, I think that's an added value, certainly, to all the processes of decision making and planning as well. Some more ideas? Where do you think are we as young people very effective in the whole process of, tackling these transboundary issues of different rivers and their challenges? Come on, guys. I'm sure everyone sees problems and we're all agitated most of the times, or at least I am, with all the kind of things we see.
Can I respond?
Go ahead. Noemi. Did I get that right this time? You're on mute.
Oh, because someone was talking again, so that's why I didn't talk.
Go ahead. I mean, Elisa will go after you. Go ahead.
Okay. Okay, so I'll just say that we should not underestimate the power of mobilization we have as young people on social media, or just again like the Friday for Future march, or that we are active, we can make noise and just kind of impress them and say we are watching you. That's also something important, because they saw that we are capable of mobilizing across countries, across the whole globe. So yeah, that's all. That's something that's a power we should not neglect that we have.
Absolutely, very rightly said. We are watching you. The fact that we are making our leaders more accountable for our actions, because we are the future, and people after us are the next future. So it's very essential to tell them that we are there and we are going to mobilize if something's not going right. Lovely. That's very nicely said. Elisa, you had something to say?
Well, it actually kind of builds off of what Noemi said, but I think that one of the ways that, especially in transboundary basins, that we can make a difference is we can build coalitions across state boundaries, because we're not mired by politics or certain roles that we have professionally. And so we can support data exchange and relationship building and coalition building to then pressure our state actors.
Very true, very true. Some more thoughts, or maybe we can just wrap this discussion. Any last thoughts, last words? Okay, then let's wrap this up. I think the idea of having this kind of a discussion is to really understand where we all come from, what we understand about our transboundary basins, and how do we really look at the solution space. You know, we always have this notion of talking about challenges. I think what we're trying to nudge through this session is really look at how do we co-create these solutions, you know, the amount of challenges we've spoken and also the role of youths that we are seeing within this space. We only want to reinforce and sort of reiterate that hey, we're there and we are trying to do something. And, you know, it's not just speaking about it, but it's also a little evidence-based. There's also science attached to it and what we speak. So it's a little bit of both. And I think as we go on, we'll really take you through these solutions that Viviana would sort of carry on in the next bit. So thank you. I learned a lot, or I hope everyone did. So let's just move on to the next bit.
Okay, thank you, Maitri, for your nice round table. So first, I would like to thank everyone to be here. My name is Viviana, and I will be talking about the ABCD co-creation model. We can go to the next slide. So first, I would like to give you some background information. So in last years, several projects and the formulation of public policies have been developed by a top-down approach. What does it mean this? Basically, like policymakers and experts are leading the process, and the achievement are just for a few aims, and normally the civilians are not considered. Next slide, please. So talking about the European member state experience, since our project is located in the European Union. So this approach has been developed in the last few decades. So the idea was to build cooperation to grow not just nationally, but also in a supranational level, using the top-down approach to create a market creation. So what they have nowadays as a result is an increased economic growth, facilities for European citizens in terms of work, travel, life quality in general, a single market as we know, as well, just one currency, trying to unite the diversity that we have in Europe. Next slide, please. So this looks like it's working, right? But the thing is that we cannot use the same approaches for everything. So for some issues, these kind of approaches are accurate, but for others, new approaches are needed. So for example, the issues related with environment. So we need the community to be involved. We need the community awareness, as we have been talking previously. So this requires a little bit more effort. It's a little bit more difficult, and in the top-down approach is not suitable for this kind of, like to solve this kind of issues. So next slide, please. So here is the question that I would like to ask all of you, like, which is the best way for you for a dynamic multinational and multi-party approach for co-creation? So next slide, please. So keeping this in mind, I would like you to focus on this image that you can see now. So the best idea is to approach to address these kind of issues is to have a multiple approach. So here we see 4 categories where we can actually analyze an issue. In this case, we are talking about river basin challenges. So first we have social. So what is the role of the social, of the people, communication and cooperation? And then if we go to economic, so what is the role of economic? So we can talk about financing mechanisms to solve the problems in the river basin challenges. Then we go to ecological, so how we can make resilient the river basins. And then the role of the institutional, it's in terms of legislation, frameworks, and initiatives. So basically, this is the way to support the rest. So how we can make these river basin challenges work and support through the legislation, frameworks, and initiatives. So here we can see how we can actually merge the different factors, and this is how I would like you to understand the importance to don't focus only on one issue, but how we have to look everything that is connected. So, for example, just to give you another example, we have in the economic and ecological, so we have ecosystem services. So how restoring a river basin can actually create value for people living in that area. So how the water quality can improve, and then people that need to use the water for crops, they don't need to treat it because the water is enough suitable for using from the source, directly from the source. So this is somehow the way that ABCD model, it's thinking about everything that can be related with the issue. Please, next slide. So here, to tell you more in detail about the ABCD co-creation model. So here we are starting with letter D, which means demos. Basically, is how we can identify all the problems and wishes of the end users. In this case, you, the young people, how all of you can be heard and have a vote on what is going on with the river basin. And then we connect this with the authorities. So for example, we can talk about mayors in the local perspective. So how we can make these problems, these wishes from young people to be heard in the local perspective first, and then we can go a little bit bigger in, for example, in the European Parliament. So how we can actually have some influence in public policies, as I told you before, and make this strong. Then we have the civil services, which are actually the public sector, which actually is also related with the authorities, the academia, so all the knowledge, all the multidisciplinary knowledge, as one of you said before, how actually people can have access of all of information, technical information, social, cultural. So not only the experts about, for example, water quality, have the access to all the parameters of the river, but also all of you can see, can check and understand, even if you don't have that technical background. So make easy for everyone to understand what's going on with the river basin. And finally, as soon as we can identify all of these problems that we can have in the river basin, we generate solutions. We think about, okay, we already identified the problems, so we want to find a solution, how we can address this. And this is the last part of the ABCD model, because it's how we start working on changing that situation or the problems that we have with the river basin. Next slide. So I just wanted to give you a good example of the bottom-up approach. We have Room for the River program, and which for people that don't know about this, it has been a big program which involves around 39 projects along the Netherlands to fight against floods. So make flood protection and improvement of the spatial quality. So this has been a recent example of successful, because this program is actually well known worldwide for how they actually achieve with on time and budget about all the issues that the Netherlands had for flood issues, and how actually people working in the project, their general project manager, went to the farmers, talked with them, also with people living around the floodplain, how they actually could agree with also academia. So this is just an example that I wanted to give you, how actually how this can work, and it's a really nice example about how the stakeholders' involvement from the early stages of the projects is essential for success in the implementation of these kind of projects, and also how to analyze everything as a whole, like a multiple approach can actually address all the issues that can be connected with the main issue that we can have. And next slide, please. So just to finalize with my presentation, so as I said before, we start with the letter D, identification of young people, expert, not expert, ask them about their issues. So that's why we are here asking you about what kind of issues you can identify and living close to the Rhine. Then we have A, the identification of small people that can be in the government, and how they can be also part of this process, and how we can align both the problems and how we can influence as well the public policies. Next slide, please. And then we have C, cooperation with servants in merge aims for the Rhine, and B, which is connected with D, once the issues are identified, the evaluation of solutions that can be done. And that's it. I have finished. So now I would like you to invite you from breakout rooms. Based on the presentation that I just give you, the idea will be to discuss, like we want to separate us in a small room so you will be more comfortable to talk. And the idea is to talk a little bit how we can actually implement this ABCD co-creation model, which ideas comes to your mind, like, okay, since I understand this, I think this is the way to apply this, the best way to approach. So I think we can go with the breakout rooms now.
Yeah, so before we go, if anyone, of course, has any questions based on Viviana's presentation, please, of course, let us know. But we will go for a breakout room, and then there we can co-create together. So I will, let's see. Give me 1 second. But if you have any questions for Viviana, of course, please go ahead.
I think yeah, we have one.
Yeah, I was wondering, I am a rapporteur for the IUCN. I know there's like someone else in the call, but how is your project funded? Because are you independent? Do you rely on subsidies? And yeah, like that was my question. Thanks.
Thanks for your question. Well, at the moment, we are financed by Rice Butterstadt, which is the Minister for Infrastructure and Water. But the idea is to grow and to find some co-funding. So that's what we are working at the moment in the project, so how we can make some partnerships and fundraising for the project to grow.
Maybe Emily, do you have something to add there?
No, so basically, yeah, we are funded by Rijkswaterstaat, which is the executive agency of the infrastructure and water of the Netherlands. And then, as Viviana said, we are funded for the first phase, which is in October. And then based on co-funding, we continue growing with our project. And we are placed at IHE Delft in Delft, yeah, in the Netherlands.
Yeah, do you expect other countries to like kind of set the same type of I don't know, a group or like organization? Do you expect, for example, Belgium, France, Germany, or are you like already collaborating with them?
Well, we are Youth for the Rhine, so we represent the whole region. But our aim is that if it's successful, we want to replicate this in other river basins around the world. So that's why we have members from all over the world. So we're already cooperating with France, Germany, we have Switzerland, Netherlands. So it's already quite a few countries on the Rhine basin. Okay. So if there are no more questions, then we can just start the breakout rooms. I think they're still taking advantage of the remaining seconds of the breakout room, and then they will come.
Yeah.
So, by the way, Viviana, like, did we have certain themes around each breakout room, like water scarcity was ours, or we just talked about in general from there?
Oh, well, since we chose one problem, we just presented as the problem that we identify as a climate change problem, and how we can present like this solution that we have been discussing.
So I'll present it as like, so we chose water scarcity as a problem, and this is what we came up with.
Exactly. Exactly.
So everyone is back. That's perfect. So I think now we've had time to discuss climate challenges together in our rooms, and now it's nice to hear quickly what we discussed. So perhaps we can ask the representative of Amrita's breakout room to say a few words.
Jan, would you like to summarize it? Yeah.
Yeah, if I remember everything we've talked about. Yeah, we basically spoke about how sensitive are those water bodies based on where they are, and how sensitive they are to the human activity that's around them, and the rapid changes to the uses of the water, but also to construction and urbanization, and how that deeply affects the river streams and their conditions. But to it, we also talked about different solutions and different concrete issues. Some of the issues being the extraction of water itself, or some others being the pollution of the water, many times with invisible elements, so we are unaware that the water is polluted. But then we also saw opportunities on setting visions for the people and how they relate to the water, on educating children, mainly on how they also understand those water bodies. They understand the relationship with nature, or even with water, and try to use those learnings at a young age to educate them for better behavior, better behavior. There was something else. I feel I'm forgetting something.
I think you summarized most of the things already, and it's about as you said, there are problems, there are solutions around us, but we fail to understand the available resources. And also we are talking most of the times the issues, but we fail to connect different ideas of like policymakers, implementers, and policy technologies, and the grassroots initiative. I mean, these different sections we fail to connect the dots. We also discussed that.
Many times we forget about the underlying problems, focusing only on small problems we can perceive, but try to solve them, and then what's really underlying, what's really the issue, it's just forgotten, and nobody tries to tackle it, or those who raise the voice up for it, they are not heard.
Well, thank you very much. It's very insightful. if anyone has any questions to them. I see, Ram, you have your hand up.
Yeah.
Yes, sorry again for leaving. Was outside of my will, but now I'm back. And I agree with you, and we had some interesting discussion in the room number 4, I think. And basically, I just wanted to add, it's very important in the Rhine and some other basin to look at this stakeholder coordination function, because even if there are like some agreements between states, this function of coordinating all the different actors. There are lots of different actors: the youth, water utilities, municipalities, towns, energy boards, water boards, and so forth. And somehow, in the Rhine River, there is a skeleton structure for those actors to cooperate, but it's not being used, or it hasn't been used so far. And I'd be very interested to know whether you have discussed this within the Youth for the Rhine within the organization, and whether some of other basins maybe have a functional coordination function to connect the local, the national, and the international level.
That's a really good question.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Rom, for the input. That's yeah, that's one of the part of our objective right now. The way we can hear about different aspects or like different issues, people, like especially youth, they see around them, like a different portion of the Rhine section, and how can we build our group or like our initiative more strong enough to connect this kind of loop, connect this kind of, this raise to make them heard, make ourselves heard, so that we can have effective connection with the implementers, policymakers, and we can have very good approach of stakeholders integration, stakeholders analysis, and we can move forward with the possible solution that we can create together. That's one of our main objectives. And this is one of the main initiatives we have started with our outreach idea. And today, as we've said, is our first public interaction. And we are so glad to have you all so interactive and so giving with the feedbacks. Thank you so much. And as we've already said, we are quite open, and we actually would like to encourage you all to visit our website, www.youthforrhine.org, and please give your input, interest, so that you can be part of our initiative in regular discussion, and we can bring together great impacts in the regions that we belong. Thank you.
Thanks, Amrita. Now I'd like to ask the representative of Viviana's room to share with the group, please.
Okay, give me a second to pull up the. Okay, so in our breakout room, we chose water scarcity as an issue, and so as an issue connected to climate change, and then also water, and so there was a lot of different discussion. One thing we started off with was so for instance, agriculture is one big user of water, and so the effects of how agriculture uses water and what kinds of products and things like that are chosen can really have a big impact. And so a lot of times there's overuse of water and overdrawing from rivers and streams and also other water bodies. And then also this is also in the context of like industries and other things like that. So there's many ways, but some of the things we talked about was having strong and clear legislation at different levels to limit water usage. So we can talk about on a national level, so in Germany, and transnational level, like when you say region, within within states, within a country, but also interstate between. So like for instance, Germany, Holland, France, like can be one and then also on the national level, but also making sure that we know that on the local level too, how it's used and also we know that how it's used is important, and that can also connect into it. And a really important thing within all these different legislations and treaties is also about who is being engaged as stakeholders. So, and also especially really important is local and those that are right on the ground, because we know that, you know, top-down models often are usually missing out a lot of information, and sometimes it's for certain interests. So we talked about stakeholder participation. So for instance, engaging farmers, cattle farmers, ranchers, and then also local citizens on the local level, especially, and really prioritizing that as a mode, and especially kind of engaging actually in most priority, because stakeholders, especially like on that local level, know the most about and most about the area and are most engaged, and often these are silence voice. And so we talked about collaboration and communication between local communities and experts to find solutions, because a lot of times what Viviana and then others noted was that that, you know, experts come in and they say, I know everything. And so that's where it's not true, because it's usually where the local knowledge is much more than that. And that's one of the things. And then also we talked about having a really important thing first off is having, you know, because we have to really know what data and what things are happening on a local level and others, especially on water use. So building ways to gather knowledge and information about upstream and downstream use of water is really important. So especially because we know that you know, what is happening on the upstream really affects the downstream, and how we're using it and everything like that really is important. And then finally, there's a few other things. So recognition of activities and also in government control. Especially recognizing that sometimes government isn't involved in water use and things like that. But also we have to recognize too that sometimes we need independent bodies, because in different countries, government can be taking money from corporations and things like that, special interests, and then like, you know, foregoing water protections and pollution and everything like that, and just putting in there. So really, like, for instance, the pollution of like from leather making industries, who just are looking to cut corners. That's one instance where there's a lot of water that goes into it. There's a lot of pollution from the waste that ends up being pushed into streams and things like that, without recognition of what's going on. So we have to really push for that, and cut that down, and make sure that both either government involvement or recognizing that maybe government is a little bit of a problem sometimes. And then there's, from that, last one thing really is just creating a sustainable certification, because one thing I think that we talked about that, and all this youth we can create ways of engaging, especially from grassroots and other things like that, and being in different stakeholder positions. But we can also, as youth, create a sustainable certification around water use, because we also know that pressure on products and things like that, this also affects from companies using a lot of water, and being sustainable. So creating a sustainable certification where it's independent, but recognized, to kind of put on tags of products recognizing this is water sustainable, safe, and this it promotes water. It's water good. We could do hashtag water good, sustainable certification, and having an independent body, maybe put by youth, and recognizing this company is doing good products, this product here is, and you can put it onto there. So we can have a boycott or not of and pressure for products that are actually good for recognizing this issue. And then marketing is a big issue. Last thing, how to create awareness about the products we use and the water that is used to produce them. So we really want to just educate people on this issue of like, you know, water scarcity, and on this issue of water in general. and the use of it within our products and other things like that.
Yeah, thank you so much, Daniel. Actually, you mentioned everything we talk about it, and well, yeah, thank you so much for the discussion. It was really interesting.
Thank you.
So,
and finally,
I think,
the representative of Maitri's room to share their reflections.
So hi. So when we were actually discussing, we thought of actually 3 main points that we wanted to address. One is like almost similar what you guys talked about till now, like stakeholder analysis and how different stakeholders can be brought together so that it's more inclusive. And the second was water quality, and third was climate change. So when we combine like stakeholder and water quality, we discussed like how these two aspects can be come together, and because the water quality is depending upon usage, and usage is dependent upon to who it goes, and when a certain government or when stakeholder implement a certain infrastructure for maybe agriculture or water supply, it's different qualities, and when you do that, the downstream people will get affected by this. And you need to have, like we suggested, to have like an entity or something that can take control or can have a lookout on all the stakeholders, like people who implement agriculture facilities, people who implement water supply, people who looks for groundwater, people who looks for surface water, all these things. When you have an organization or maybe someone who looks out of it, this can actually correlate a lot of problems and can bring together a lot of things. Then when we came to climate change, the main thing was policies, because there isn't much policies in Europe that deals with, that was one of the points brought up by the group, policies that would deal with climate change in water, and how would the river basin affect, how would climate change affect the river water. And we were discussing on how, on what aspect should we look at climate change. Should we look at a way that we should be resilient against climate change, or should we find a solution, or should we go with climate change, like find something that we should tackle against it? Like climate change is inevitable, change is happening. Should we build something that is that can take the change, or should we build something, or should we suggest something that can go against it, okay, to decrease the changes from climate change? So these were some of the points in the outline. My mates can also add up if I missed something. So yeah, these are some of the points that we had discussed, just to summarize now.
Thank you.
Yep.
No, thank you very much. Are there any questions, any reflections from anyone else on what you've heard? If there is anything, let us know. You can unmute and go ahead and share it. But thank you very much for bringing these reflections, and I'm happy that the session is recorded, so we'll make sure to keep this in mind. And also with Youth for the Rhine, this is super valuable for us, the input we've received from the young people today. So really very valuable. I would like to then pass to Viviana to conclude, share a few final reflections, and then also how to connect to our project.
Yeah, thank you, Emily, and thank you everyone for all the nice ideas. So no, just for like some conclusions of this really great workshop. So we have some important outputs as that we are going to take into consideration is like early education. So what is the relationship with the nature? How we can actually educate children, young people, and be connected with nature and understand the issues that we have. The coordination and communication between actors. So how we can connect the local communities with like the government, and how this actually can work as for the same aim. And then we would also talk about awareness from young people. Now, this is also related with education, actually how we can be an active part of how we can address the issues. And then we also talk about the influence of public policies in climate change and water. So how with the identification of these problems, how with the knowledge that we can gain as a young professionals, or also children and young people, young farmers. So how actually we can translate that to public policies. And as Thomas said, also how to build resilience against climate change. That's something really important, and it's one of the that's a really strong statement, because we have to find processes to fight against the climate change, because it's something that is here, is happening, and we are seeing all the consequence of like the actions that happened before. So the idea will be to find processes and to find ways to just overcome this, or to try to mitigate the impact that we have as human beings, as young people, because we are the young generation, but also we have to protect the nature, the environment, the river basins for next generation as well. And also the stakeholders' involvement. So again, like how we connect against all the actors, how we can use this as an opportunity for communication, and to gain more and more knowledge, and how we can cooperate for the same aim. So, well, it has been really interesting to see all the information that we can get from you, all the ideas, and it's really nice that you have been here, and that you have been really active and you have been communicating all your concerns and ideas. And that's the idea of this. Like we want to hear about you. What do you think about this? How you can be connected? And also there is one invitation that we as a Youth for the Rhine, it's like to be more active. Like even if you are students, or nor you are not working at the moment, it's important to be active, to be informed about what's happening, how we can actually be part of the actions that can be actually a good consequence in the future. So, well, I think that that will be my final remarks. I don't know if Emily or wants to add something else.
Thanks, Viviana. Yeah, so thank you everyone who, for sticking around the whole session. I think we had a lot of really great discussions, and please feel free to check out our website. There's also, if you'd like to join us, a new member registration form there, so you can join us. And just a little, we'll be launching our water quality survey soon, so please look out for that on our website. And also our first ever Youth for the Rhine webinar will be on the 29th of April from 5 to 6:30 CET. So that you can also find information about that on our website. But for the rest, if there are any questions, please let us know. We're also available at youthfortherrhine@gmail.com if you have any further questions. But then otherwise, I'd like to close the session then. So thank you so much for everyone who joined. We really appreciated your valuable input, and we hope that we can stay in touch with you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Have a great day.